Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, the most important 90 minutes of your day. Hi, I'm Michael, the MC and opportunity ambassador of today's show. And our show's title today is, oh shoot, what is it?
Don't give your power away. Jeez. Just stole it from you.
All right, we've got a full house today. I've got all my fabulous co hosts with us and a very special guest, but I'll get to her last. We'll start with Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator.
Good afternoon, everybody. Buenos tardes.
Willow, our trauma consultant,
Hi, everyone.
and Dennis, our freedom facilitator.
Greetings and blessed love, beautiful people. Buenas tardes, gute Nacht, boa tarde, tudo bem? Vamos embora.
Hoorah. And finally, our very special guest, Piazza, our sovereignty mentor. She's also a trained sexological body worker and trauma informed somatic
What
sexologist.
you said?
And she's coming to us from Costa Rica today. How are you today, Piazza?
I am doing excellent. Thanks for having me here. It's fun to be in the room with all of you. It's already been
Nice.
fun.
So today we're talking about giving your power away and how we go about doing that, not doing that, so that we can have a much better life without making our life pure hell. But let's talk a little bit about why this is so important. So, Piazza, we want to just start us off with why is this so important?
Well, if we don't want to be slaves, it's important. If we want to go along with somebody else's agenda in all avenues of
Great
our
news.
life, then we need to unlearn a lot of things that we've been taught since before we could even speak. So if we want to enjoy our
Awesome.
freedom and step into self-empowerment, we want to look at these things and stop giving our power away and stop stealing power from other people as well.
So, what are some typical things that kind of people fall victim to when it comes to this kind of thing?
What are the things? Well, I'm not sure if I know what the thing is, but the way that it happens is, for one thing, is blame. We give up, how we feel and how we experience life by what other people are feeling or what other people think about us or other people's needs and desires when we allow them to, we put them in front of our own. Which is because, like I was mentioning, before we're born, or before we're born, and before especially we could speak, we've already been trained through our sense of touch and like what happens with our own bodies to put the power in somebody else's hands. And so from that kind of training, we don't know how to ask for what we want, and that is, for me, that's like the underlying. That underlies everything about how we go along with other people's desires, because we don't know how to ask for what we want. We didn't have that opportunity as a child, and then we never learn it, or very few of us learn it. It becomes something later in life that we decide maybe we want to learn, hopefully at one point, so that we can be free from what other people dictate for us.
So I think this really kind of comes into play. I mean, obviously with the recent developments that we've had, there's a lot of people that are concerned about their safety, and to some degree they're giving that power away of their responsibility for their own health and happiness to government bodies and government experts and medical experts and stuff like that. Is that a great example of giving your power away?
Yeah, I mean, it's like when we give our power away or when it's taken from us by, say, if you imagine like when we're a child, right? Whether our parents have the best interest for us or not, they're basically in control of our own bodies. They decide what we're going to eat. They decide when we're going to get a haircut. where we're going to go, move around in the world. So, and this gets reinforced either by punishment or reward, right? So, in the realm of the you know what that we're talking about right now, it's really
Same
based
situation.
the situation. Thank you. Yeah, it's really based out of fear. You know, if you don't do this, something bad will happen. We'll be punished in some way. We'll get sick. We'll die. We'll be put in prison, right? So that makes it easy to make people compliant because of this early training that we had. It just is a small example, which
It reminds what you're talking about reminds me of it's a biological process with very young children, specifically before they have the ability to talk. So like the situation is a child cries too much and the mother can't handle that. So they ignore the child until the child stops crying. The child eventually realizes that if they don't make a fuss, they get love and attention, which is what they need. So the child will actually adapt to be as raisable as they can so that they can create a bond with their caretaker. And it's not a thought choice. It's not like they're like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna do this. It's I have to survive. I have to create a bond with this caretaker, and therefore I don't really have a choice. And people do learn to minimize their own bodily sensations, their feelings, their wants, needs, and desires, for fear of being abandoned. And that because they don't have a memory of it, it's so much harder to diagnose accurately and say, well, maybe you have a form of abandonment that developed before you could even speak and form words. Your body understood that you wouldn't get love and attention if you didn't do this or that.
It's conditioning, isn't it?
It is.
When you said we don't know how to ask for what we want, in order to even come to that point, to the position where we can ask for what we want, we have to know about our power, right? So we have to be aware of how powerful we truly are, of what it means to stand in our own true power. Is there a moment in your life that you recall that was significant when you said, oh, that was one of the moments, or maybe that moment that there was a shift and I became aware of my power? That's when things started to make more sense and when you actually became aware of how powerful you are?
I don't think there was one moment. I think it's been a continual evolution of regaining my own sense of self-worth, or maybe even just finding my sense of self-worth. I'm not sure if I, had it early on and then regained it, or just developed it over years. But I would say that my work, the work that I share in the world, is really heavily influenced by the work of Dr. Betty Martin. She created, I don't know if anybody here knows her, she created the Wheel of Consent. And so when we start looking at consent, which is what Michael was alluding to as well, we start to see the ways that we give our power away. And so it's not only regaining our sense of self-worth, but it's also, like Willow was alluding to as well, is like actually being able to identify our feelings, identify the sensations that we feel, identify what our needs and our wants are, because when they were cut off so that we could adapt, correct, good word, then we never learned those things. So being able to learn that is important. And so like a little branch off from the Wheel of Consent is we start to talk about direct and indirect routes to pleasure. So like I could try to get pleasure through how I see other people react. My mom is now happy and she's going to give me that love, and that makes me happy. Or just the part really about now my mom's happy, now I'm happy, actually. Or I could do things to create my own happiness or my own pleasure, and that would be the direct route. So the indirect route is trying to please everybody else. That's where we become people pleasers and don't even ask for what we want, and then we can build resentment. Or we also learn to get what we, to have our needs met, to ask for what we want, and to reach out into life to create that. So both ways, both pathways are actually important, but most of us have lost the one for asking for what we want.
The lady that you were mentioning, was that Betty Martin?
Dr. Betty Martin. Yeah.
Dr. Betty Martin.
Yeah, she's amazing. Her work is very powerful for really understanding the different ways that we can give and receive.
You know, in regard to like communicating what we want, I think certainly the fear of public speaking is a perfect example of like conditioned fears and phobias that have been so effective. I mean, I think it's the number one fear that most people have is like expressing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that, and like how effective they are at conditioning people? Because fear of public speaking is something that we don't have inherently. It's something that's conditioned into us.
Doesn't it mean that we're like, if they don't like us, they're going to throw eggs at us and we're going to have to live under a bridge? Isn't that the whole essence of fear of public speaking? That we're going to get kicked out of the village?
That's abandonment talking, and maybe you should come talk to me, when you have some free time.
I forgot exactly what you just said, Michael, but it was making me think about just, our language, like being able to even have the words to identify. But could you want to say again what you asked?
Well, it's like when it comes to fears, it's the most prominent fear is people being able to to express themselves publicly. That's the greatest fear that most people have, and I definitely see that a lot when people are talking in front of others. They're, in a lot of cases, they get very nervous and anxious and all those kind of things. But that is actually a conditioned fear and phobia that they have. It isn't inherent. When we're babies, we don't have a fear of expressing ourselves. So obviously that's something we've gained through the experience. But the fact that it's so prevalent does suggest that they're pretty good at installing fears in us.
Absolutely. And inherently, as babies, we would reach out to touch things and to take in tactile information by touching everything. That's how we start to identify, the world around us and objects, right? But then when we reach out and that hand was kind of like, slapped away, the fear is instilled, then we don't do that anymore. We don't reach out. We don't try to get what it is that we need, or and I think that all affects just our self-worth, which I think is another piece in the whole public speaking, being seen.
That sound, Willow, that wasn't us this time. It was Piazza. The parrots in the background. I know, you smiled like it was you guys. It wasn't.
No, I just smiled because there was an animal in the background, and I was like, "Aw, there's animals."
Of course.
We have a lot of animals here. Lots.
And they're very helpful.
They are. Animals, in my work with the trauma consulting, animals are a safer, what's the word? My words are not working tonight.
Oh no.
It's a safer avenue for connection, especially when you've been traumatized and your bonds with other human beings are broken, or they stress out your nervous system too much. Creating that bond with an animal is like a surrogate avenue, or a better avenue to calm your nervous system down and get it to a state where it's called your window of tolerance, where you can begin to dip your toes in that connection with human beings.
I have two, other than my dog, of course. I have three animals in my room. I have a gecko and two spiders. I've named the spiders Steve and Stefan, and the gecko's name is Peter. Actually, there was another little gecko, George, but I haven't seen him for a few days. But between the three of them, or four of them, they keep my room completely clear of flies and mosquitoes or any other pests. They're very, very helpful. I love them.
Sounds like they did not give away their power to clear your rooms
No.
of mosquitoes.
No,
Thanks for
they
keeping us on target.
it's never been the goal of this show to keep us on target.
So if there's definitely a great deal of evidence of people giving away their power, how do they go about starting that process of not giving the power away? So you said something about blame.
Yeah.
What is
So from my perspective, I think the foundation of reclaiming our sovereignty is obviously is part of what that word is about, is reclaiming our self-responsibility. So we are responsible for ourselves, we are responsible for our feelings. And in order to become responsible for our feelings, we have to develop our language skills to be able to use words to describe our feelings, and we have to develop our embodiment so that we can even have that awareness. So awareness, sensation, being in the body. I think a lot of people, they want to ascend, and I think that is part of the natural process that is happening right now. And I don't feel that we can do that until we fully descend, like as in get completely in the body first, and then we could go from there. But it's kind of like starting from the root up. So yeah, developing our language skills to know what our feelings are. So much of this slavery to what other people's needs and desires, how it's reflected is through our language. So somebody does something that I don't like, and you say, well, you made me feel bad, or you made me feel angry, right? So we're blaming somebody else, and that is victim language. I blame you for how I feel. Or also very often what people say is, you made me feel like I wasn't worth anything, right? Well, anything that comes after the word like is not going to be a feeling. It's just going to be more blame, more victim mentality. And so this is going back to the title of our talk here. This is how we give our power away. So you are responsible for my happiness. You are responsible for how I'm feeling right now, right? So reclaiming our sovereignty means taking responsibility for those things. And those, to me, those are the steps: empowerment, our language, and then there's energetic realms too, which we could talk about maybe at one point. I might share a little exercise at the end.
Can I ask you about the ascension part though? Because I'm all on board with everything you said, except for the part about the ascension, because I think ascension is supposed to happen after we experience Earth. Earth is not about ascension. Earth is about coming fully into our body and stepping into our power in the physical. If we want to ascend, we can just die and we'll ascend. It's not a problem. It's an instantaneous thing. Why? I've always been bothered by people who talk about ascension while in a physical body. You got this gift, you're on earth, you can experience them, taste them, touch them, smell them, feel them, you have skin, you have everything, and then you're worried about ascension? Like, how does that work?
I am not an ascension mentor. I have no idea.
Well, you said people want to ascend. I'm like, well, why would they want to? There's whipped cream, cheesecake
in their body, because for so many people, there's just so much pain to just be present in the body with all the repressed feelings that have never been expressed. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not recommending the ascension part. I was recommending the ascension part.
Yes.
Get into the body. Although I do have some thoughts about frequency and vibration and a little bit of speeding up of things, but that's not my expertise or what I would want to talk about, because I don't know. Who knows? I don't know.
What's the meaning of the word ascension, or the root meaning? Where does it come from?
Sounds like rising to me, but I haven't looked it up, and I love looking.
Let me look it up. I'm on it.
When you talk, when you
hello,
said,
all our listeners. Are our listeners saying something, Dennis? Are you?
Tony was saying, hello everyone, another beautiful
Tony,
crazy day.
We love Tony.
When you said ascension, a while ago, I understood it. For me, well, ascension doesn't necessarily only have to happen after we transition, the perceived reality that we're moving in right now, but to ascend, if it has the meaning that you just pointed out, Agnieszka, about rising, moving upwards, then on a energetic level, then I understood it when you just mentioned it, ascending from mere physical awareness to to the emotional, to the intellectual, and eventually to the spiritual realm. So that's an ascension, like on the inner level as well. I don't think we have to.
Chakras.
Yeah, I don't think we have to transition these realms in order to ascend on in that way. So that's how I understood it. I don't think necessarily it only that is only something that happens after we pass these realms.
So I looked up I looked up ascension, and it says the act of rising or ascending, especially the act of moving to a higher or more powerful position.
Nice. So
it doesn't actually say about the leaving your body and going upstairs. It's all about a higher position. It could be here, it could be, well, I guess wherever you are, you can go up step higher, right?
So if you accept that we're here, also as a physical being, and we're moving in the physical realms, but at the same time we are emotional, we are mental, and we are also spiritual beings. So one is not exclusive of the other. So
Hi, Willow. Sorry.
That because actually that just, for me, that says it all. That's about getting and becoming fully embodied and rising into our sovereignty.
Nice. That's well said.
I love
the thing that disturbed me about looking up the meaning of ascension was like the second position from the top said, what are the symptoms of ascension? And I was like, do I even want to know?
feeling
as though you're in a pressure cooker. It's the answer.
Heather's with us. She says, hey, and then Colleen
Heather.
says, yay, Willow is back, and she's gone already. Quick. And then
Don't worry, guys. Willow will be back.
and
I'm sure she will be.
Shambhavi says, can ascension mean from lower vibration to a higher energetic level? And yeah, I think that's how I understood it as well. And Colleen,
Yeah, I'm not sure about these symptoms of ascension. There's a series here, including memory loss, loss of identity, periods of deep sleep. Yeah, I'm not on board.
Colleen was asking,
Anyway.
why do I feel like Piazza was talking directly to me about pleasing others? Yeah. That's a big
Because-
Who
thing.
said that?
About pleasing others.
But who's the one? Who's the
So-
person who said it?
Colleen.
Oh, cool.
because most everybody has that, like, you are not alone. Most of us, unless we put some attention to rewire ourselves out of that, have that.
So how do we do that?
In some degree, that's kind of that obeying kind of tendency that a lot of people have. Is that pleasing people is also kind of recognizing, like, oh, these are authority figures, I've got to do what they say.
Exactly. Yeah, and it starts
Yeah.
with your parents.
In my brain is these are authority figures. I got to do the opposite. Just the same slavery as the other one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It plays out in relationship, of this punishment or approval. We either get love or we don't get love. And, it plays out in relationship by people going along with in relationship agreements that don't feel good to them, where somebody's more in a position of power and we're always submitting. So, it's like the microcosm and the macrocosm. As we get bigger, it is, maybe the government, but on a smaller level, it's like looking at those day-to-day things. How are you in your reaction, in your interactions on a day-to-day level in your relationships? If somebody else wants something that you don't want to give, do you just say yes? A lot of us have lost the power to say no. We feel selfish, we feel bad. Somebody wants our help, but we're already exhausted and we don't want to to do that, but somebody asks us, so we do it anyway. So who are we doing it for, right? We're doing it for somebody else at the expense of ourselves at times, just as a small example.
Welcome
just
back, Willow.
I was just reminded when you said that of, you know, I think the quote is something along the lines. I think this is Richard that says this. You define your character by what you say yes to.
That's a good one. And Osho said, if everybody likes you, you're doing something wrong.
That's interesting. What does Kahil Granny say, Dennis? It's always got a Kahil Gibran to quote, like right at the top.
He says, and I feel that was specifically directed to you, and let the winds of the heavens dance between you.
Oh, nice.
It's difficult to do if there's resentment because people have been going along with somebody else's agenda for too long.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the things that's when it comes to romantic relationships and husband and wife type situations, there are a lot of agreements that are made that may not necessarily be officially made, but in some cases they're roles that people play. And like when it comes to like leadership or like the dominant position, in some cases that's something that can be switched based on what is the current role that's being played. And so I think there's a lot of misconceptions about like who's in charge, who's the one that should be directing things, or who's the one that's leading. That doesn't necessarily always have to be the same, but what would you say to that kind of stuff?
I totally agree with you. It changes according to the situation, and if it doesn't have that flexibility, then it's like frozen in something that may not be healthy. It's like what you're talking about with leadership. Whoever has the best idea at the moment, that's who we should follow. But that doesn't mean it's always going to be that person. Absolutely. So when we get stuck in those roles, it's not really serving anybody. And usually somebody in the relationship is feeling that, but afraid to ask, right? Coming back to that.
Yeah, and that's, to me, that's one of the things I'm trying to get across with my course with ethical emergence is the idea of practicing towards getting, more proficient at things. And so if you don't practice things, if you don't take leadership roles, if you don't take, the leadership position, if you don't practice doing that, then you're going to be bad at it. And then of course other people will say, no, you can't do that. And so here again is kind of this, when you're in a position where you're doing something that is important to you, being able to do it well means that you've got to be able to practice it and take the time to practice that. And certainly that's kind of one of the things that we can give to each other is that opportunity to practice different roles, different circumstances in which maybe we're not great at the moment, but we could be great if it's something that's important to us. And that could be the position where you really do grasp how much power you have is through that experience, that practice that gets us to the confidence that leads to us really being who we want to be.
Mm-hmm.
I would add that, and that's based on my experience of working many years with children, youth, and also young adults from a highly violent environment, and which were oftentimes very traumatized. So my experience there would confirm, so what you said earlier about if you don't have the vocabulary, if you don't have the ability to express your feelings, then the expression of those feelings will happen, but not necessarily in a peaceful way. So violence seems to be rooted, at least in those cases, like many times, in the inability of communicating and of expressing your feelings. And like I said, I've seen that, in the streets of Kingston and in, high security prisons and juvenile detention centers, and it was sometimes amazing with how little training, or how would you say, with a few minutes or like a few hours of focusing on that, of learning words, of learning of becoming more comfortable, of becoming of creating an atmosphere of safety. How people, how quick people would open up, and how much of a difference it would make. And sometimes the words and the building vocabulary, that seems, that will take a long time. So the thing that I was working with, which is capoeira, is something that would allow people to express themselves, through music, through, physical expression, so through the dance and the martial arts movements. So that was a more direct way, of releasing some of the energy and some of the feelings, and of expressing, if you're like if in a serious mode, or if you're like just joyful and playful. And I experienced and I witnessed a lot of release of people, of children especially, who were not able to express their feelings freely through those means as well. And that again, through that, and I'm just coming to that conclusion while I'm talking, that really means to get to know your power as well, and to stand in your power, because the ability of learning, to do movements that are potentially, even lethal or like harmful, but and to learn about that power that you physically have, and then to use that and to dose it, and to use it in a way that it won't harm anyone. That is like a huge step, that's like a huge growth, because you learn to manage yourself. You don't only learn to manage yourself physically, but also emotionally, and eventually in a holistic way. And I feel, that was just confirming what you said earlier about the importance of expressing yourself. And what I'm adding is that it doesn't have necessarily to be with words, but in some cases you can also express yourself, through sound, through music, through I would say, I would go so far that you can even express yourself without opening your mouth, without even making a move. And that is a different level then of communication. But there is a level of communication where you can, just being in the presence of somebody, where, if you're aware as well, you can be aware of where he or she is, or what he or she, it can be just a look.
It's a
as
good
well.
monologue, Dennis, but you're like, is there a question?
No, not right now.
I have some questions. Sorry, go ahead, yes. So.
No, I appreciate what you were saying, and I totally get, like, we can even express it on the unsaid, in the unsaid realms. And I like for me, a lot of the work that I'm doing is emotional release work. That's something, Michael knows that I've been having workshops at Anarchapulco where everybody's blindfolded and screaming with really loud music, because what we don't express, we repress, right? So that's going to be stuck in ourselves. And so having the freedom to have an opportunity to do that is just really quite unique. It's like, if you start to express your anger, which is one of the ones that we judge the most, anger is not cool, anger is not spiritual, whatever it is that we judge our anger as, and we don't express it, it's just still sitting in our cells, in our liver, or our knees, or wherever it goes, and can show up as resentment, or quick or like more like just angry people. If we don't just let it go when it comes up, we can become angry. So, but because of the society that we live in, that it's not really acceptable to express your anger, it's actually difficult to be able to work it out. So if we could work that out on a unsaid realms, that would be awesome. I mean, actually what I'm seeing is that how that could look is like dance without sound, and just really working it out somatically. to shake it out, to get it out of the cells, because until we do that, it's still there. It's an energy and it's still within us, and it is still controlling us, really.
There's an element in Carol's the 3-day course, Full Body Awakening, on Saturday evenings, an optional element, but it's where you actually dance out all these movements with like meditation, well, sort of really aggressive meditation music going. And it's a great component. Like, it's something that really leaves an impact on you, because you get to really move the body and, like, silently scream. And there's an element which she calls Martian talk, which is like blah blah blah, blah. Like, you get to express all your feelings without using words in like at other people, and then they go back, like, repeat it back to you, or they say blah 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 back to you. And then you can sort of role play, like, imagine that this is your mother and you're angry at her, but you can't talk to her, so you're going to go blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually does release a lot of pent up tension and anger inside.
Yeah, so that's one way to reclaim our power in relationships, when we take the time to do that inner work. Yeah.
So can I ask you serious questions, like 2 of them?
Serious.
Yeah, serious. So question number 1, how do you know that you're in your power? You're standing in your power.
I guess when we know that we're in our powers, we recognize that we have the ability and the ease and the grace to be able to express what our needs are.
What does that feel like?
What does that feel like? It feels probably expansive as a sensation. It feels relaxed, as opposed to if I'm afraid to ask for what I want, but I'm feeling it, but I'm not saying it, I'm feeling rather contracted.
Yeah, so that was my other question. How do you know that you're not in your power? What's somatic? Because you're a somatic specialist. So what somatic evidence is there that we can look at and say, okay, am I standing in my power, or is this just an illusion? Is it an ego trick? The ego is saying, yeah, you're in your power. You stay angry and you be angry and you stand your ground. But that's not being in your power. That's being weak, right? There's a whole other layer standing in your power where you're not angry and you're calm. And what Dennis said, the thing you said on Sunday, that everything is perfect.
Everything is perfect as it is.
You had this awesome speech.
I think my answer to that, Agnieszka, would be that we would know on the sense that we're not being triggered. So, and the triggers we're going to feel in a somatic way, a bodily way. And for everybody, that's going to show up in a different way. I can't say that in Chinese medicine, they do say that, certain emotions are stored in certain organs. So, eventually, if you have a lot of anger, maybe you're going to have some
liver. Yeah.
But I think that essentially it's that we have response ability rather than reacting. So when we notice that we can observe how somebody else was acting or how they treated us or whatever they said, and just observe it and respond from a conscious place without reaction, I think. But how it's going to show up in the body, it's really different for everybody. Some people feel it as all different kinds of sensations, or some people, see it in their body. Everybody has a different way to interpret things, I would say, as well.
What do you think about that, Willow? Don't look behind you while I'm talking to you.
My husband asked me a question and I wasn't paying attention. Sorry.
I know you had something to say about that.
Somebody wrote, I feel too much attention power is given to verbal expression, whereby study showed that we first receive the energetic expression.
The nonverbal cues or the emotional energetic? Like energetic, do you mean as an aura, or energetic as in visual, like I can interpret what the other was communicating?
I think she's meaning like when you first receive the energetic information. So it could be like the aura, the facial expressions, when you're picking up whatever they're putting out. I think that's what she's referring to, because a lot of people says verbal expressions, but I think she meant non-verbal expressions.
I think it probably referred to the example I gave earlier with the children that I work with, and that that you're able, if you're aware of it, that you she says as a resonance, you can perceive before somebody even opens his or her mouth, on an energetic level, what's going to come out. So before the sound even manifests itself, there's on a more subtle level, you can perceive, if you're aware, what the energy of that which is said or which is spoken is. And therefore it's able to speak with a harsh voice, but to still do it in a loving way. Although for somebody who is not on a more subtle level listening as well, with beyond his ears, that might sound, oh, that's really cold and that's really harsh, but somebody else who might hear more than what his ears are perceiving might actually see, oh yeah, that sounds harsh, but actually it's coming from a place of love, of appreciation.
Mm-hmm. Vibration.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Germans get blamed for that a lot. My partner's German.
But he's not he's a real German, but he's very Jamaican influenced.
Okay.
As part of the accent. I was gonna say you're not a real German, but you are a real German.
I'm trying everything to live up to it.
Nice. It's good. It's good reputation. Solid, strong, clean.
So let's get back to the subject that matter there.
We've been on the subject that matter all the time, the whole time.
Well, it seems to me like stepping into your powers and taking responsibility for yourself. That is something that a lot of people really have a hard time with. To a large degree, they do want to remain dependent or remain sort of childlike, because there is some positives to that. But what is the draw to that? Does anybody want to talk to why people refuse to take responsibility for things?
Well, I'd say it's probably because humans are drawn to familiar situations. We want to be around people who we know how they're going to react. We know what's going to happen. Predictability is safety to our nervous system. So it's kind of like the devil you know is better than the devil that you don't kind of situation, where you know how to deal with this. You've survived this long, and making any change right now can seem really scary because you don't know how you're going to handle it, and you don't know if you can come back to. This goes back to like attachment styles with children who have been traumatized. They don't have a strong tether to something that orients themselves, and therefore it's really scary to move away from the familiar because they don't know that they can come back.
Yeah. Anyone else want to touch on that?
Shambhavi says laziness. And I was gonna say, because Agnieszka, you asked earlier, say it again. And that's perfect too. That's part of it as well. That's a choice as well. Not making a choice, that is a choice too. Because and then the laziness, I would say, comes in by not making the choice. And so not all of us came here, to make choices, to make those choices, or to, with a certain amount of energy that it requires, obviously, to step into sovereignty, to step into freedom, because that's not a decision that you make once. That's a decision, and that's a way of life that you have to do continuously, and you have to conquer that, in every moment, over and over again. And not all of us came here, to do that, and that's okay as well. And it's just, I feel it's pertinent to know that there's others there who will take away what you give them or what you offer them by not stepping into it. So if you don't step into your power, then there's others who take that as an excuse, to be able to take it away from you. But it's always like it's a give and take, right? Like somebody can only take from me what I don't pay attention to, or what I consciously or unconsciously give away or put on a silver plate for them to take.
Yazoo, you was going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, well, then I was listening. I forgot what I was going to say. But well, the last thing that you were saying, Dennis, is, you know, that's actually an exercise that I practice with clients, is taking back our power, whatever I have consciously or unconsciously given away, I take back. And then also on the other side of that, and I give back to you any power that I consciously or unconsciously took away from you. Because I think that we do that all the time, you know. And then it's, you know, and this happens on an energetic level, it's happening on a physical level, and also like on the energetic levels, eventually this shows up as disease in the body because it's a dis-ease within us, right? Like if we think about you know, like breast cancer, for example, often associated with women who are over giving, you know, just always giving, that, you know, taking care of other people. It's like just getting, you know, sucked dry and giving away their energy and their power. So, you know, I think of it as like energetic hygiene, this exercise. And I like to bring in the somatic levels. You know, you can get up and move and say, you know, name somebody. I give back to you any and all power, any and all power that I took away from you, consciously or unconsciously, and so I take back to myself any power that I consciously or unconsciously gave away. Energetic hygiene, you know, that is one way. Yeah.
Well, this kind of also is kind of a version of intellectual self-defense and possibly even physical self-defense to some degree, but really being able to understand, you know, like how you position yourself in regard to other people. If you are subservient to other people, then you're really kind of relegating your safety and security to some degree to other people. And certainly when it comes to like our intellectual self-defense, which for most people is nil, they you know, they really have no inclination of what kind of power they have when it comes to all the things that, you know, like when it comes to education or schooling or all those kind of things, they expect other people to teach them or other people to tell them where to go to find the right stuff versus them, you know, having the
But you know,
curiosity to just find it themselves.
if you abdicate responsibility, then it's never your fault, right? Like you can't get in trouble. You can't, like, nobody will yell at you. If it's somebody smarter and better, like a scientist or, you know, a governing body of some sort that makes the decision for you, then you don't have to take any responsibility for it. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to check the facts. You don't have to look at the statistics. You, like, all of that is absolved because then, you know, essentially you're still a child. Sorry, go ahead.
I think psychologically you can trick yourself into believing that, but you're not free from the consequences of your choices. So you may not have the ability to respond to that, or you may not feel like that's your responsibility, but you're still going to pay the price of the dis-ease in your body. So it's really not like, you can say you're not responsible for it, but that doesn't free you from the consequences of your own choices.
Just so you know, Willow, in the psychosomatic circles, we say dis-ease, 2 words.
That's what I was trying to say, dis-ease.
That's what I said.
And just being silly.
Yep.
So yeah, the other thing that I was going to say, it's sort of like the fallacy that between having a job and being self-employed, because, you know, people are like, oh, it's safer to be to have a job because then you know where your paycheck is coming from and it's security and you know you should do that. But in reality, if you have 20 clients and one of them craps out or 5 of them crap out, you still have a bunch of clients. But if you have one job and that one person decides that your pants are funny, that's all, that's it. You got no more job, you know, and whatever they write on the separation papers is whatever they wrote. But, you know, it could be something stupid. It could be your taste in clothing. It could be, you know, I mean, when I was working in corporate, sometimes people would stop being my friends just because I said I smoke weed on the weekends. You know what I mean? So there are certain judgments that go with being employed, and the certain level of slavery that goes with being employed that's just not existent when you're self-employed. Because since I've been self-employed, any of my clients that know that I smoke weed on the weekend couldn't care less, because I'm judged by the merit of my work, not by the extracurricular activities or clothing or hairdo or whatever else I choose to do with my life. Essentially, I'm not a slave.
Yeah, I think that the more that we take responsibility, the responsibility for what it is that we want, and we speak to that, the more we step into our own power, and the less power we give away to anything outside of ourselves. And so I think that it would be a very interesting experiment if everybody started doing that. Like, what would the world look like? You know, we've just been going along with the dominant
agenda.
The agenda. We've been going along with the agenda. What if we don't? You know, what is that going to look like? And, you know, we think in terms of very 3D kind of ways, you know, but what if we just harness, like Dennis was talking about, your inner power, you know, stepping into our own inner power? What would that look like? So to me, it just goes back again to stepping out of the victim mentality. So the more that we're entrenched in the victim mentality, we just continue to give it away, right?
Yeah, it sounds like sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was just going to say that, you know, one of the things that I think, you know, you talked about reactive, but there's the other version is proactive, you know, actually taking what is actually going on as a situation and devising a different strategy. You know, certainly a lot of the things that we are, I guess, victims to at this point are those things that have been programmed into us, that have been, you know, put into the artwork, the literature, everything else, so that it almost becomes second nature as to what is the future going to be. We've already heard it a million times because we've watched movies about the future, and we've heard stories about the future. The institutions have told us what is going to be the future, and to some degree, they've taken, you know, 90% of what the future is going to be away from us, because they've told us these stories that's what the future is going to be. Well, a proactive person says, well, let me write my own story. I'll tell you what my future is. But the fact of the matter is most people are not, you know, aware of those skill sets. They don't know.
Most of the stories that they tell us are all freaking lies. And I have proof from my own lifetime that they're lies. And in 97, when there was this huge freak snowstorm in Victoria, the whole city shut down. No, I'm not joking. So there's always these post-apocalyptic movies, right? Post-apocalyptic movie, everything stops. There's no food. People start growling at each other's throats and sinking their teeth into the jugular to drink the flesh blood. That's not what happens. I've been through several disasters in my life, my long life, and that's not what happens. What happens is people band together. People step aside. People open stores that have no business of being open in order to provide the services that are needed for people to survive. You know, people sell the last carton of eggs to somebody else because they know that person needs the eggs.
Also, something that something I just thought of is, you know, we see these examples of what reality actually is with our own eyes. We see the current situation going on. There's nobody dropping dead. There's nobody, like, we know rationally and like physically our sensations are telling us
known people
what's going on.
I digress.
Or we know that it's not like as big of a deal, but the TV says that it is. The people around us say that it is. You know, all of these things, and we have been trained since very, very young to dismiss our own visceral reactions, to dismiss what, you know, when we walk into a room and someone makes us feel really creepy. Oh no, that's just uncle, you know, so and so, and they're just a little weird, but we accept them, you know, kind of thing. Yeah, go give him a hug.
Sit on his lap.
Yeah, like we're trained from very, very young to dismiss our own reactions to things and dismiss our intuition about what's going on. So it doesn't surprise me that we have a world full of adults, which are basically very tall children, who are in the habit of dismissing. They don't see anyone dropping dead. They don't actually know anyone who's dying of anything that's, you know, related to right now, like what the current situation is talking about. Yet they believe everything that's on the TV. And the discernment is, there's no discernment because of that, because we're not even in touch with our own bodies.
Because most people don't even know what the word discernment is. What were you going to say, Piazza?
Oh, well, I agree with everything that you're saying, Willow, except for the part that somebody makes you feel something.
Yes, I didn't realize that I said that. Good catch, because I usually don't like using that term.
So it's really ingrained into our language, right? It's just super ingrained. I mean, I have to catch myself at different times too, you know, or I feel like, you know, I feel like he's not safe. That's not the feeling. What is the feeling? What is the sensation, right? So, and you know, the other thing that you were saying, talking about the TV and predictive something, Michael had the word for it, is
Programming, predictive programming,
right? That's why it's called tell-a-vision, right? They're telling us a vision. So, but going back also even a little further, I made myself a note here. Absolutely, I agree with you, Michael, that it's, you know, with responsibility, it's not about reacting to things. We can be proactive, and that can be a responsibility. I think that is a responsibility. Being proactive is responsibility rather than reactivity, which might be going out and, you know, just becoming like that which we don't want.
We can read it also as tell lie vision. And then going back to the victimhood or the victim mentality, I feel the path to ascension is to realize that the one who thinks he's the victim is not who you really are. And then if I follow with that thought, then it's like, who is the one who steps into power, or who thinks that he is stepping into power, and who is also the one who thinks or who is giving away the power? Because if that was the one, if that was that which you are, then, you know, there wouldn't even be a problem, because that which we truly are, there is, you know, it already is. So there is nothing to give away, there's nothing to add on, because it's already complete. It's perfect, Agnieszka.
Then our conversation finished. We put into Invita.
Because then, you know, from speaking from that perspective, you know, what is there to do to step into our power, or, you know, to get there? No, it's about realizing who we truly are. And I feel the work really is that. It is to realize and to actually to self-realize, to realize who we are, and who our true self, to realize our true self. And then from that perspective, is there anything that we need to do, or is it just to come to terms with who we already are, with beingness?
I agree with you, but really what you're talking about, like for me, the word that I use for that is Advaita. I don't know if everybody knows that word. It's like non-dualistic thinking, right? It's like, I'm just going to realize who I am, but that's a mental process. So maybe we could do it that way, but not everybody is going to be able to do it that way. A lot of other people are going to have to do it through an embodied practice, which is a practice. It's something, it's like we have these neural pathways, these ways that we're used to being, we're going to be, you know, obey in this way. And eventually that becomes a very deep groove. And that's the only way that we know how to be. So somebody was saying something about like, laziness, right? You know, yeah,
Somebody.
you know, we have to make some effort. It does take some effort. It has holding a vision of like, I'm choosing freedom. I'm choosing my own personal sovereignty. and then you have to practice. And that's where having people to support you, a community, you know, and other things, and having that reflection, relationships. If you're having a mature relationship with somebody else or a group of people, you can have that reflection so that you can support each other, which I feel is the true meaning of being in a relationship, or the gem, I would say, right? Is that we can hold each other up and support each other to be leaders at times, to, you know, ask for what we want, to have our boundaries so that we can say no if it's not what we want to give. And, you know, and then the other person's not a victim, or not taking things personally. And they go, oh, okay, you don't want to give that to me. Okay, thank you. Thank you for saying no, right?
When I expressed that, I wasn't expressing it as seeing it as an excuse of not engaging on all the other levels. I feel, you know, one is as valid, you know, is valid as well as the other. And from my experience, and I always can only talk from my own experience. It is not. I can experience that not only on the mental level but on other levels as well. And I feel that the dualistic nature of the reality that we perceive and that we're moving in as well, you know, so that is a reality on a level, but it is rooted, or what's how we say that the box that is around it is the oneness. So the limited form that we are, or we are limited expression on many levels, but we also are. So one is not exclusive of the other one, but we also are that oneness. So we are both of them at the same time. So I don't feel that one is exclusive of the other one, but it's a reality that we can perceive from different levels as well. You know, from a even physical, on an emotional level, on a mental level. I think it is possible to perceive that, and I agree with you when you say that not everybody is there, you know, or has reached there as yet. And I think that is the journey that we're on, and we are all on different, different paths or different segments of the way, so to say. And then, of course, it's to find out where we are, and you know, of finding the people, finding the support on all levels as well, whether it's with people that we surround ourselves with, techniques, with with masters, with teachers, or within ourselves in the end, to proceed on our path. And the freedom that we all have is the freedom of choice, you know, to whom we associate with, what kind of techniques we use or not as well.
Right, so you're talking holistic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I've got another. I've got another question in regard to. I think something when we talked about this subject matter, it was something that I was thinking about, and I guess it's become a little bit more of a thought. But when it comes to dealing with the past, you know, there's a lot of people that can't seem to get over the past, like who they are is defined by the past. They don't necessarily feel like maybe they've did the right things in the past, and so they wish that things would be different, and they spend a lot of time kind of ruminating on what they could have done differently in the past to change circumstances that have happened but are already in the past. We did a show on acceptance, and one of the ideas, or certainly one of the things that I got from that, is just accepting the past as the past, that you can't really change the past. You can't wonder why the past is the past. It's just the past. And so if we spend our time and energy focusing on the things that we can't change, and then avoiding the things that we can change, we're really lining ourselves up for a disaster.
Isn't that another?
I'd like to.
Hang on, just 1 second. Another form of slavery, like living in the past, is a slavery because it takes you away from the present. Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd also like to point out that what's the word? Neural. This is what you're describing. It's you're getting trapped in a neural pathway. It's a neural pathway that's being triggered. Your nervous system affects your physiological state, meaning adrenaline, cortisol, all of those stress hormones are being pushed through your body. And the reason this happens is because the reason you ruminate on the past is because that part of you that is triggered at that moment is still stuck in the past. They can't move forward because those memories are not integrated into the mind. They don't know how to handle that situation still to this day. And therefore, if it were to ever come up again, all they have is this mediocre at best coping mechanism. It's like when you see that ex of yours that you can't get over, and every time you see them or you have this memory of them and it triggers these emotions, you have to drink to numb it down. Like that's kind of what's happening. It's actually it's a neurological process that's actually it's happening. It's not just in the mind. It's a physiological state.
Is the past the perception that you have of a past moment in this moment right here now? And if so, is it possible that you can revisit what lies in the past? And if you wish so, and if you can take a different perspective of that what happened, and through that change your present perception of that which you think is in the past?
You can, but the problem is you have to make sure that it is a perception of the past and not a flashback. A flashback, you cannot tell the difference. You're in the past. Your body is producing the same chemicals that it did during the event and to deal with it. So to your body, time means nothing. It's not a perception of the past. It's not an idea in your head. This is a physiological chemical response programmed to protect you the same way it did at the time of the event. So separating that event, you have to make sure that you're actually perceiving the past and not reliving it.
So if time means nothing to your body, to whom does time mean something?
A different part of you that's not being triggered.
Yeah,
this is where like
Go ahead, Piazza.
Well, to go on top of what adding to what Willow is saying, I wrote a poem and there's a little line out of that is exactly what Willow's talking about that. And it's because it's not really true that what you don't know can't hurt you. It's frozen in the cells. It's the environment. It's the chemical climate that you're living in, aware of it or not. So take the old pain and hold it up to the light, blah, blah, blah. So, it's like, it's a physiological, it's a chemical experience, it's a memory experience, it's electrical, it's energetic, it's all of those things. It's like, but that is the piece where whenever it comes to just like, people think that they can just do talk therapy and change their mind about something. I just don't agree. Because of what Willow's saying it is a physiological experience. So we have to change those pathways. We have to discharge the nervous system of all of that adrenaline, cortisol that is still sitting in there if it's never been released, because we are living in the past in a physiological sense as well as other ways, right?
So in order to change that, do you revisit that which was or which you perceived at the time in the past in order to release that and to facilitate that process?
That's the beauty of somatic work, is you do not have to do that. You don't have to go over and ruminate over the story. It's just dealing with what is present. How is it presenting? Is it presenting as anxiety or PTSD or, a trigger to certain kinds of experiences? Deal with that. Yeah, it's re-traumatizing for an individual to have to go through and remember things. And half the time when they do, and I know this from personal experience, you remember something and then you doubt it. This happens especially around like incest, rape experiences, going back when we repress memories. We don't want to experience it. We protect ourselves from having to, and then when it starts to come back, it's so fragmented. We're so fragmented that it's difficult to even know if that was truly an experience, if that really happened. So, you can do some investigation. Are there other people in the family who had that experience? Or, and you can kind of put some things together, but you may never remember. And it's not going to support your healing, your reintegration of those fragmented selves to remember. And that's something that incest survivors, rape survivors deal with a lot, is like, do I need to remember this? and they doubt themselves, and it becomes a stumbling block in their path to recovery, or to not recovery, to integration. I like to say integration as another word for healing. So no, you don't have to remember.
Yeah, in psychosomatic therapy, I mean, we use emotional trigger point release and other techniques like that in order to release memories from the body. You don't actually have to talk about it. When the muscle is released, often the person has a physical reaction, laughing, crying, screaming, whatever. But that's what releases the pent up energy. It's not reliving it in your head, that because the energy is stored in the body and the thoughts about that are in the head. So it's not the right place to be dealing with that necessarily. I mean, there's a time and place for cognitive therapy. I think that in order to identify something, or maybe, normalize something, that could be good, but I think somatic therapy is much more effective. Another thing, just one more thing, I noticed like emotional release on the level of trigger point emotional therapy when I was in Vipassana for 10 days, which is a silent Buddhist meditation. And I had a lot of somatic releases after day 4. So that was interesting, because at the beginning, it was just me struggling with the situation. I didn't want to be there. I changed my mind. I want to go home. Is everybody going to think I'm a loser if I go home today? Am I like, I just want to get out? There was all this crap. And then on day 4, it just started going, and a lot of stuff released.
Yeah.
But I was very arguing with reality in that experience too. I was like, I'm not going to that meditation. Don't Buddhists can't make me.
See, I'm
Stay in bed.
I really relate to this part of the conversation, because I have not gotten to the point where it's like a lot of emotional release, because I have a lot of the repressed memories, or what I believe are repressed memories. There's a lot of shit that I don't understand what's happening. I don't understand why I'm feeling this way. There's no memory tied to it. Or there's vague memories tied to it that make no sense. But like, where do people go to? How do people find a method for emotional release? Like, is there one method, or are there like specific people? What are the key words? What do people need to be looking for to find someone who can help them release all of this energy? Because that's where I am, where I'm just like, I have looked for people to help me release this, but because they don't know what I'm dealing with, and I also don't know exactly what I'm dealing with, it's hard for them to trigger that release if you don't know what you're trying to trigger.
Only if you're a cognitive therapist. It's only hard if you're a cognitive therapist.
Totally. So it sounds to me like Agnieszka doing it with some points, and I might be, and maybe also doing some of like what I do. I guide people in sound movement integration, and really, guided breath work and getting into the body so that can be released, right?
You were going to show us an exercise. We're almost at the end of the show. Do you have time to show us the exercise?
Oh, I shared it in the middle there about like saying that I take back and I give back. It's like,
okay, can you repeat it from the beginning so that the listeners can really understand how it starts and how it ends and all that?
Sure. Wait, let me think. I wanted to just finish something in response.
Okay, sorry.
I do that. Yeah, so it does. I don't believe that you have to remember, but you do have to get into the body and just be acknowledge what it is that you're feeling without putting conditions on it, and then express it. And so, some of I have to add there is that, well, I made a documentary about infant male circumcision. This is one of the earliest ways that violence was used to to make somebody else go along with somebody else's agenda. Maybe it's not intentional, maybe it is, I don't know, can't claim to know, but there's a lot of consequences from an act like that, or from sexual or violent or physical abuse with a child. But it can also be, taking your ice cream away, or something that your puppy away, something that you really wanted, or grabbing you out of a situation that is like, your body's being controlled. So that feels and is a violation. So it doesn't, like when we wonder sometimes, like, did this happen or did that happen, or it doesn't really matter. It's just deal with the feeling. You know, I'm feel, you know, what are you feeling? What do you know? Yeah. You don't have to answer that unless you wanted to.
Well, I was just thinking that how many times I've asked clients like to get in touch with their body and like, what are you feeling right now? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? Any of that. And a lot of people, especially the with specific traumas and more severe traumas, they don't know. They can't figure out what it is that they're feeling. And then other times I'll be like, okay, don't stop trying to imagine it. And what do you hear? Is there a voice? And they'll be like, oh yeah, that's what you're asking. Okay, cool. I can tell you what that, you know, that voice is saying or what that, you know, figure is doing. But there's a lot of people who don't, they don't know how to answer that question. They just
But you can
blank.
ask them, is where in the body are you feeling that? Where in your body are you feeling that?
Well, and it goes back to what I was talking about early on, is that we don't have the language to express our sensations or our feelings. We haven't really learned that. We say like, I feel like this, and we name a situation, or, you know, we're thinking.
What's a better way of saying that?
Well, usually when I say, I feel like you ripped me off, that's an action.
Okay.
What I feel underneath that might be like, when you took that from me, I felt angry and I need you to return that. That would be owning your feeling, right? It's difficult for people. It's vulnerable, you know, to express our feelings and our needs, but we don't.
So like is a simile. So what you're saying, it's not a simile. You're actually angry. You're not like angry. You're actually angry.
But usually people.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. People don't usually say, I feel like angry. No, they say, I feel like
you're an asshole.
You hurt me. You're an asshole. That's what I'm talking about. So this
but when you say it that way, when you say, I am angry, because I do this all the time, I'll say, you know, I feel kind of like this, or, you know, that. And it distances myself, where it's like, I can change my mind. If that's not okay,
simile, yeah,
I can change it and say, well, that's not what I meant. So
you can still change it if you're angry.
But if you say, I am angry, that's taking responsibility for you're actually saying, this is what my body feels, and you can't take that away. You can't say, I am angry, but I lied. I'm not actually angry.
Yeah, but you could say I am angry, and then the other person is like, well, no, actually what I was doing, like the conversation Mike and I had a few days ago. And then I was like, oh, so the actual truth is this. Okay, there's no reason to be angry anymore, because now I understand the situation on a deeper level, on a different level, right? So I can change my mind after being angry, and by finding out more information and going, oh, you know what I mean?
But you can't change the fact that you were angry. That's the point. It's not changing your mind. It's changing.
But using a simile in a sentence is not going to change that fact either. It's just going to pretend that you didn't.
Well, I didn't say it would change it.
No, sorry, Piazza.
It just passes the blame, and that goes back to what we were talking about, how we give our power away. It's a way that we pass the blame. I feel like you did this to me, and now you're responsible for my situation, my feelings. So that's how we give our power away. We're bound, like anger is really just a messenger. It's about showing us that a boundary has been crossed, whether we thought that it happened or not. We felt the anger. And, you know, I think it's interesting if, for those of you on here who speak Spanish, you know, and I don't know about other languages, but we say, I have anger. Whereas in English language, we say, I am that. That's not what we are, right? It's something that I have at the moment, or I'm feeling. So, you know, language is a way that programs us. You know, changing our language is one way that we can, you know, it's like a key to start to change our experience.
What do you say in German, Dennis? Do you say I am angry or I have anger?
Yeah, it's something I point out a lot to people as well. It's the I am. I am angry, I am this, I am that. It's not, no, you're not. That's what you're feeling. That's not who you are. You're just feeling that. In Portuguese, actually, it's there's many ways to say it, but eu estou com raiva is like I am with
That was
anger.
German, not Portuguese, just so you know.
So they say I am with. So it's not who you
Now
are, but you are
now
with,
say it in
with the anger.
Portuguese.
Eu estou com raiva. example.
That's not German, that's Portuguese.
Yeah.
Why does it sound so much like German? I thought Portuguese would be more sing-songy, like Spanish.
I find it interesting that other languages, it's like the language is built to reference the parts of you. So I do internal family systems parts therapy, and one of the big things is, when someone says I am angry, and I say, okay, a part of you feels anger, or a part of you has anger, or you're with anger. Anger maybe is a part of you and you're with them. It sounds like other languages have a reference to parts of you as parts, but English only refers to these emotions as like the whole. Like there's no separation, which leads to the parts being blended with self.
I think we've got to admit that English is the slave language, and we've got to be able to discern how to communicate better through
Well, even
understanding what the words really mean.
the English that we're taught in school is a very minor part of English. There is like 90% of English that we're not taught. And I think that there's a lot of depth and nuance and beauty in English that's just not being used on a day-to-day basis. We just don't need those big words. Just don't worry about them. Don't worry about what they mean, you know? And, must I add the thing about how England does not have a national dress? And I think that's a key to some kind of information, because it's the only country in the world that does not have a national dress. Why is that? What's wrong with that? Where does that come from? Everybody has a national dress.
Are you saying national dress as in like a dress of the nation?
No, I'm saying as a national costume that you wear for special occasions. Every single country has it, and I mean, in North America, we have the Native Indians who have national dress, the feathers and the beaded stuff, and it's cool. And in Poland, we have the embroidered stuff and the scarf and but England doesn't have it. Just doesn't have it. And when you try to look it up, they're like, well, in the 1700s, there was this red coat that was really popular and a lot of girls wore it. So let's say that's our national dress. And I'm like, no, it ain't. No,
right.
a red coat that was popular is not a national dress. There's culture, there's depth. You embroider it, you create it. It takes hours, then you stand up in it and you're proud. There's something in that.
Okay.
I think
as the MC, I've got to take
You're gonna shut us down,
responsibility for
aren't
the
you?
time.
Just completely
We should
Piazza,
continue this though at another time, because this conversation got really interesting really fast.
Yes, it did. Piazza,
you can come back next
down
Monday.
some points. Were you able to cover all the points the important points?
I mean, I think that for me, everything all just comes down to the foundation of embodiment, is getting back into the body, out of the head and into the body, out of the head and into the body. And then, using our words, using our language, using our communication so that we can step out of victim mentality. And getting into our body, out of our heads and into our body. And when we get into our body, that is when we can start to be more in tune with what our needs are. And then, create those new grooves, those new neural pathways for asking for what we want. And that is, to me, that's the key to how we will step into empowerment within our relationships. That is how we reclaim our sovereignty. So I don't really care about this law or that law or whatever. I don't really care. It has to do with, like, if we can't do that on the microcosm within our own selves, of course we can't do that as a planet. It's up to us to be the change that we want. So
it's an inner war, you're saying. It's an inner war. We have to win the war between, like, in our heart before we can stand up and win it in the world.
Well, I don't know if we, like, maybe we don't even want to put it into the view of a war, but of a reintegration, which I call healing.
Nice.
All of the aspects of ourselves and then, you know, having that self-worth. So, and then I go back through that little exercise. I'll do that very quickly, that Agnieszka was asking. So, you know, after any kind of interaction, whenever I work with a client or, you know, whenever, it's just energetic hygiene to say, I could say, you know, Mary, I give back to you any and all energy that I consciously or unconsciously took from you. And you can use your breath and you can use body movements to send that back. And then you can use symbols, see colors, see vision, you know, like shapes or whatever, and see, you know, here it is. Oh, it's sitting in the, you know, the bottom of my lungs. I'm going to give that back to you. And then, oh, you know, I'm going to take back to me any energy that I consciously or unconsciously gave away. Because we do it all the time. We're stealing, leaking power and energy from each other. So that is one way that we can do, since the world is all energy, we can do it on that level and bring in the somatic. I guess that's the last what I would add. Thank you for asking.
I just had a
Awesome.
really strange sensation, like when you literally brought your hands like this, my body was like almost like you were pushing me. I was like, I felt that, or I reacted to that. I don't know what it was, but it wasn't bad. So thank you.
Do we have any other comments from our audience before we close
Colleen,
up?
Yeah, Dennis.
Colleen says, yes, please. We need a part 2 to this. So our audience wants you back, Piazza.
Great.
Yeah, that would be nice.
You can always come back next Monday if you can.
I will come back. I'm not sure if it can be next Monday, but I do. I want to come back. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate this well, and especially, you know, to honor the body, which is, you know, such a tremendous gift, and which many of us, if not most of us, don't seem to be using to the extent that we could, and we, you know, just barely seem to tap into the potential, you know, of appreciating our body and of recognizing it as that this amazing feedback mechanism, you know, like it's an expression of our inner being, you know, in the outer realms, in the outer world. And if you know to read it, and you know you're certainly an expert of that, it's amazing, you know, how we can read it like a book, and how we can then get into resonance with it, and basically use it as what it is supposed to be, a feedback mechanism of the energies, you know, that are coming at us, and of using it as an instrument of expressing our true self, and doing that in a beautiful way. And I feel that for me, you know, what stood out like in this session is that it seems that to really be in my power means, and to step into my power, it means that I recognize that everything that I do, that I say, that I am, you know, the actions that I take, and the physical expression that I am as well, is resonating with everything and everyone around me. And being aware of that means that I can do this in a guided way, or I can have a say in that, and I can do it consciously. And even if I'm not stepping in my power, if I decide to not do so, then it still is everything I say, I do, I think, it's still in resonance with everything around me as well, just not to that degree, to an unconscious degree. And it is a tremendous encouragement to see how we can raise the consciousness and awareness of our being, you know, by using our body as well, in a conscious way, and using it to the extent that we, as you showed so beautifully, are able to do so. And I would please beg you, before we close off for today, that you share, you know, maybe you want to share some contact or your website or so that people can get in touch with you, or maybe, you know, explain in brief words, you know, what are some of the offerings that you have, or you mentioned some workshops that are there, if that's available for people.
Thank you for that. Yes, my website is I am Piazza Unleashed, and maybe that'll be somewhere written where people can see, because they can know how to spell my name. So I am PYASA Unleashed.com. And I just got active on Instagram in the last 3 months, and I've been having a lot of fun actually sharing content over there. I make little videos and I write posts that, yeah, I feel has, carries a potent message. And I'm about, and on Instagram, I am Piazza _unleashed. So, and yeah, I'm about to offer a challenge actually, which will like a, maybe a 7 or a 14-day challenge that if people want to get on Instagram, follow me there, I'm going to start to announce that, and going to do a little Zoom call where I talk a little bit more about direct and indirect pathways to pleasure, so that we can develop and deepen our own quality of touch. And that pathway that I'm talking about, the ability to ask for what we want. This will help to support that. So I have that. I do one-on-one.
Maybe you can tell us more about it on next Monday.
Definitely trying to get that Monday scheduled.
Yeah, that Monday. So, and I do one-on-one sovereignty mentoring online, and then I do what I call activation vacations, where people come and spend 10 days with me, women or couples, and the exceptional man. But I work with people through like an application process. We get to know each other and decide if we are really a good match. And that's the way that I do mentoring. And then also I practice sexological body work, which is full body touch. Some of it's internal. So to help to deepen one's awareness of the, sacred reciprocity of giving and receiving touch. So I help people to heal their sexuality and their relationships. Activation vacations, one-on-one mentoring. I have a women's retreat coming up in Costa Rica. It's all on my website. But most of all, it's fun to follow me on Instagram and join this challenge. It's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun.
Wonderful. We usually broadcast on Mondays and Wednesdays, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to have a show on Wednesday. Do we have a topic on that on Wednesday show? What is the?
We have a topic. It's about grieving and loss and stepping into a new reality.
Okay. So we'll be covering that on Wednesday, and I'm not sure what we're going to do on next Monday, but I don't think it's going to include Piazza as much as Agnieszka wants it. I think we're going to have to schedule out a little bit further out ahead to get that done. But we definitely offer and have an open invitation to you to come back, because we did have a great time. The time went by so fast that we're already over. But thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention, for all our audience. Thank you so much. Have a good evening, everyone. And hit that button, Dennis.
Thank you.